Hello everyone, Dawny Wanders here, and today I have wandered to the Shubenacadie waterway. Throughout this series of videos, I'll be joined by my friend, marine historian and Shubenacadie Canal volunteer, Richard MacMichael.
The canal itself is probably the most ambitious project ever undertaken in Nova Scotia during the industrial age.
We'll explore its history and how today it has transformed into one of the best recreational corridors in all of Canada. Welcome to the Shubenacadie Canal. Welcome back to my series on the Shubenacadie waterway. In the first two videos of this series, myself and my friend Richard MacMichael explored the parts of the canal that are in downtown Dartmouth, and then we started making our way up towards the high point of the waterway, which is Lake Charles. But first, we're going to start here in Shubie Park, which is a very popular park in the heart of Dartmouth. There are multiple ways to access Shubie Park in several different parking lots. Today I've started at the one closest to Lock 2, so I'm going to throw it over to Richard MacMichael to give you a little bit of history of that lock.
So this is the lower elevation of Lock 2. And Lock 2 was one of the original locks started in 1826. And this is where they had severe stress fractures develop because of the freeze-thaw winters with the granite blocks. And so it was rebuilt starting in 1854. So it is the only composite lock along the Shubenacadie Canal. And by composite, I mean it still has some of its original granite blocks, which you can see here at the lower elevation. But moving into the lock, you have the more North American style of lock construction, which is stone walls held together with mortar and then reinforced with lumber. And you can see the 2x4s along the bottom. They're both horizontal and vertical. And so you're basically seeing here three phases of construction. You've got the original granite blocks, you've got the second phase of construction, and then you have some of the work that was done to shore up the walls of the lock as part of the restoration work, because obviously they didn't have woolmanized lumber back in the 1850s.
Something that is really cool here is that there are lots of old dwellings and other archaeological aspects that can be explored right along the trail, up and down both sides of the canal. Okay, so where are we now, Richard?
Well, right now we're sitting on rocks, Dawn. And to the untrained eye, this might look like a pile of rocks, but in fact, these are foundations. And this is what's left of one of the canal camps that was built along the canal. And it was here that the Irish and Scottish stoneworkers that worked on the canal would have lived when they were completing a specific section of the canal. So behind us is the channel that would run from Lock 2 to Lock 3. And what they did here is widened and deepened this channel to create a navigable passage for the tugboat and the barge. And so in addition to the little dwellings here, which were stone and the roofs were made out of thatch or sod held in place with some rocks and some timber, there was a small general store nearby where they could buy some supplies, and there was also reputedly a tavern.
Oh, wow.
So that the stoneworkers could enjoy a tankard of Mr. Keith's finest India Pale Ale after a long day on the job.
Do you think that tavern is open yet today?
I think it's probably would require some archaeological assistance to find its remains today, John. But the majority of Irish workers lived in the little homes down the Irishtown Road, and it was so much easier for them to live on site at various work sites rather than bring them up by horse and cart every day. And what they did for this province really can never be discounted, because it's estimated that in the mid-1840s about 40% of the workforce in this province were first or second generation Irish. Most of these archaeological sites were excavated starting around 1986, when the Canal Commission was created and carried out by professors and students from St. Mary's University's Department of Archaeology. And some of the things that they found, a huge collection of clay pipes, bowls.
I knew you were going to say pipes. That's a really, really common find.
Of course.
and archaeological sites.
Cups, saucers, plates, cutlery, of course, and some of those are on display at the Fairbanks Centre, which is the headquarters for the Shubenacadie Canal Commission. Only a short walk from here, and we share that with Adventure Earth, which is an HRM program that does science and outdoor programming for kids.
Cool.
Yeah. It's not Winterfell, it's not Mordor, though the gates do look impressive. This is the lower elevation of Lock 3, which along with Lock 5 was the largest piece of industrial infrastructure built on the canal. It's the second of the two locks that was built to link Lake Micmac and Lake Charles. And along with the Marine Railway site, this was a bit of a problem for the canal company because Lake Bannock and Lake Micmac sit at 17 meters above sea level. Lake Charles is 31 meters above sea level. In fact, Lake Charles, believe it or not, is the high point of the Shubenacadie Canal. Everything is basically downhill from there into the Shubenacadie River. And so this lock was again originally started around 1826 with the granite blocks, which you can still see here. In 1854, when the canal company got going again, it was largely rebuilt using smaller rocks held together with masonry and then the timber reinforcement on the interiors. And in the replica doors, you can see where the sluice gates would have been. So when the tugboat and barge were lifted up to Lake Charles and began on their way, of course, this lock is full of water. And rather than simply opening the doors and creating a tsunami, the sluice gates were opened by staff that would walk out onto the top of the lock, raise the gates, and this allowed the water to equalize gradually back down into the channel running to Lock 2. This is the upper elevation of Lock 3, and from up here you can get a sense of just how epic a construction project this was by its sheer depth. And this would raise the tugboat and the barge the final 5 to 6 meters, depending on the water level, from the channel that ran from Lock 2 up here to the holding pond that leads into the channel that runs up to Lake Charles, the high point on the canal. And along here you can see the stone walls with the masonry. You can also see the vertical reinforcing posts, which were actually bolted into the wall of the lock for additional support. A lot of wildlife species in here, of course. If you're fond of squirrels and chipmunks, you can get a bag of black oil sunflower seeds, and the chickadees and nuthatches will fly down and eat out of the palm of your hand. You end up feeling like St. Francis of Assisi. Other bird species, of course, there are the usual blue jays, the pesky old pigeons, lots of crows. And if you go out to the lakes, you'll see bald eagle and osprey. In fact, at Shubie Beach at Lake Charles, there's a huge osprey nest at the top of the telephone poles, which has always been popular. And right now we're getting some jibber jabber from the squirrels.
Someone's yelling at
they're
us.
cussing us out. But we do get rare visitors. So, for example, if the weather's really nice up in the marsh by the holding pond at the Fairbanks Centre, you'll find Carolina wood duck, which are an occasional
really
village up here with their red eyes and their little quiffs. And I've also seen heron back there as well. And for wildlife, of course, you've got squirrels, chickadees, occasionally a raccoon, deer, fox have been sighted as well farther out the trails.
Oh, I've never seen a fox
And
here.
as you know, we had a very unusual visitor in here about 3 years ago.
Yes, we did. And I was here that day, but I didn't see it. Did you see it?
I only heard about the seal.
We only heard about it.
But there was a seal on the trails here in the canal. And the Department of Fisheries Oceans introduced themselves to the seal and returned him to the harbor. But it's interesting, there was a lot of lively debate as to where the seal came from. Did the seal come from the harbor? Because if he did, he would have had to come up the culvert into the daylighted sections of the Sawmill River, into Sullivan's Pond, under the culvert under Hawthorne Street, into Bannock, Micmac, and then into here. But he also could have come all the way down the Shubenacadie River.
Yeah, easily.
Easily, very easily, because
both of those are not that neither of those routes is that difficult for the seal. It's just a long
haul
journey.
Yeah, because in 2018, when Nick, the enterprising young fella, swam the entire 114 kilometers of the canal, he encountered a number of harbor seals on his swim in Grand Lake in particular.
Yeah, they live in Grand Lake.
Yeah. And that's fascinating. So yeah, there's a really wide diversity of wildlife in here in the parks. Thankfully, no bears.
No bears. There are two animals I wanted to mention, though, that are three animals I want to mention that are particular favorites of mine. Brook trout. I often see brookies up in the
Frenchman Brook
Yes, Frenchman Brook, the part of the park where it's a dogs off leash section, and those brook trout are so used to dogs splashing into the water that if you could spot the trout, a dog might come along and splash in, and the trout don't even really swim away. They're just like, whatever, we don't care.
That's a dog.
So that's one species that I look for every time I'm here. I've seen beaver in this park, and my personal favorite is probably the snapping turtles.
You get a variety of turtles, but the snappers are really fun too.
Yeah. I just like their general attitude is sort of grumpy, and I kind of appreciate that.
and just up at the stairs going down from the main parking lot, there's actually currently right now a snapping turtle nest that's been covered over, and it's a protected site now.
Right, yes.
Obviously for people and their dogs there's signs, but there's nothing we can do about raccoons or some of the other wild animals. But hopefully that the nest will stay protected, and we'll have some more cranky snapping turtles in the water soon.
New baby cranky turtles.
That's right. Yeah, they're the Lucy of Charlie Brown of the turtle world.
Just love the snappers.
The cranky young ladies of today are the cranky old ladies of tomorrow.
That's right. I'm standing in front of the Fairbanks Centre, and Richard took me inside to give me a little bit of an overview of some of the things that can be seen here. It's a great place to start your visit to Shubie Park, or really to any part of the Shubenacadie Canal.
This is the Fairbanks Centre, and this is the home of the Shubenacadie Canal Commission, incorporated in 1986. And the building is dedicated to the family that was the driving force behind the canal through all its iterations. Charles Rufus Fairbanks, his son Charles William Fairbanks, and then the other son Louis Fairbanks. And it's here where we have the exhibitry about the history of the canal, the Shubenacadie River, its ecosystem, the role that the canal played in the lives of the Mi'kmaq, Acadian settlers, and the story of its canal itself. And the centerpiece is this amazing map from 1848, which shows you the entire run of the Shubenacadie Canal, including the elevation changes as well. So you've got the Dartmouth Lakes, Bannock and Mi'kmaq, and then Lake Charles, the high point of the canal, down through the other locks as well. And so you can track the voyage of the tugboat and the barge from Lake Charles into Lake William, the two locks that would have been located on either side of Fall River. Lock 4 is known as Fletcher's Lock because it leads into Fletcher Lake. And the Lock 5, which is at Wellington, Lock 6 at Horn Settlement just by Enfield. But what also makes this map fascinating is the fact that this is prior to Confederation, and the map shows you all of the useful natural resources that would have been at hand. So you'll see gypsum, granite right here, roofing slate, and then my all-time favorite, land of a superior quality, mostly covered in ship timber. Because remember, Truro, Maitland, Parsborough, Five Islands, Economy, all major shipbuilding centers in the mid-1800s. And so that ship timber was massively important. You can also see where the tidal locks were on the Shubenacadie River itself. And tidal locks weren't traditional locks where the ship would go in, the doors would close, and the water would come in. They were used to divert water to create a deep passage for the tugboat and the barge so they wouldn't run aground in the river at low tide. Because remember, Bay of Fundy, Minas Basin, highest tides in the world really impact the river, especially as you get down to Colchester County as it used to be back then. And so the tugboat and the barge would often be fighting the tides to get out to Maitland.
I'm going to wrap it up with this portion of our visit to Shubie Park. Once again, I would like to thank Richard MacMichael for taking the time to give us a great tour of this amazing piece of infrastructure. If you're enjoying this series, please let me know, leave me a comment, and stay tuned because there will be a few more videos coming up. But that's it for me for today. Thanks for watching, and Dawny Wanders, we'll see you in the next one.